I like to
What?
use the word dynamic and full. I red-eyed in from, where did I red-eye in from? I flew overnight Sunday night, landed Monday morning into session. I was with Adobe Monday, Tuesday. What are we today? Wednesday? Wednesday, yeah. So Monday, Tuesday, yesterday. And then last night left Manhattan and came to New Jersey. So I'm in New Jersey right now, Clark, New Jersey. And going into things this afternoon through Thursday and Friday with L'Oreal. So I'll be at the L'Oreal HQ. And I'm actually working on 10X hair products. Isn't that the best? And then home Friday night, and then Sunday evening I fly back out. I fly to Turkey. I'm going to Izmir for a couple of days for agriculture clients, and then I fly to London.
It is my absolute pleasure to give a heartfelt welcome to Kyle Hermans. Kyle and I have been friends for almost 40 years, and while our lives took very different paths after our school years together in the 90s, we have remained in touch. Kyle is married to the beautiful Jenna Hermans, and together they parent their 4 children through an ever-changing and diverse world. Their company, Be Courageous, serves as a global digital-first business consultancy. Kyle is an exceptional human being. His global influence is simply astounding. This interview with Kyle is close to my heart. Memories of the past and how we connected as close friends have gradually given way to a deeper appreciation of what Kyle, in particular, was born to do. He's the real deal. Okay, let's hit it. Let's go. So, for the longest time that I can remember, you've always had an influence over people and over the decisions that people make. And it's so interesting that you've now become an expert in your field and you support individuals in developing the confidence to be courageous, right? I feel like you've always saw potential in people, which was an incredible thing to have. And I don't remember a time where you were ever in a bad mood. You've always had this innate ability to pivot, to redirect, to overcome your fear. So we know that courage, stated simply, is the ability to confront, not to avoid, but to confront a physical, emotional, or psychological obstacle that may cause some anxiety, fear, or apprehension. Is that, like, in your estimation, would that statement be correct?
Yeah, well, first of all, I adore you, and I loved all the years that we've had, and just as you were reflecting, my brain just went down such a beautiful memory path. It really means a lot. And you're one of the very few that also has gotten through to me, and that we've just been able to have this relationship for decades, which is amazing. Courage is interesting. I think my framing on courage, the confront, not avoid. I think is a really interesting framing of it. The way I've always have come to learn what courage is that people are always trying to say be fearless or remove fear, and the reason why we avoid things is because of pain. We want to move away from pain. We want to move away from anguish. We want to move away from past experiences that seem to be that the qualities of those past experiences seem to be recreating themselves in our future. And so we want to avoid that. Now, to me, the concept of courage or even of fear, what constitutes avoidance, and avoidance is obviously this is going to feel hard. It's going to feel psychologically unsafe. It's going to do something to my body that I don't enjoy. I don't enjoy the physical or mental sensation. That to me tracks down to belief. And the belief is that we're believing something in that moment. And the believing in something in that moment is that, and I really have simplified it in the research down to 2 simple things, is that we're either giving our fear energy or we can give our courage energy. And not many people realize they have an abundance of courage. They feel like they have to do something really crazy in order to gain courage. But what's interesting is courage is always present. It's a switch you can flip on. And so the confront to avoid, in my experience, is that you are believing in something greater than what you're trying to avoid. So we confront it when we go, look, I'm about to have a hard conversation, or I have to, give hard feedback, or I have to do something I've been avoiding because it makes me uncomfortable. But the outcome, like the not doing, is worse than the doing of it. So the courage is to say that the outcome that I'm dreaming of, or I'm imagining, or what I prefer to have instead, outweighs the fear. So I'm going to confront it. I'm going to lead in it because the cost of avoiding of it is far greater than the cost of actually confronting it. Is the way I'd look at it. And it's such an interesting human dynamic that I will spend probably the rest of my life living on the edge of that decision. It really
It's
is
so
an edge.
interesting. That's interesting, because I was actually going to say the thing I always ask myself when I'm faced with the decision to be courageous is I will always ask myself in the moment, what is the cost of giving into your fear? What is it going to cost you?
It's a great question.
And with that, I don't even have to answer it, because I immediately know, well, I'm not going to give into the fear, because it's not, I don't have the fear. Like, that's not going to be my story. My story is not going to be the giving into fear thing. But for someone who has been operating out of pain and stagnating in fear, how easy would you say it is to flip that switch? Like, what is it that's going to flip the switch?
Sure. I think it's taken a lot of curiosity and discovery to get to what I think is the switch. The switch is a simple question: is it true? And it turns out that 99.9999% of everything that we ever fear never ever happens, and it's never going to happen. And if you track back, like one of the exercises I will do with the highest level senior executives, right down to young kids, when I have the privilege, and I'll call it the privilege, to be sitting with somebody who's vulnerable enough to be expressing fear or anxiety to me. And I felt like, I've been in so many of those situations where, just like you shared earlier, like folk will come to me, and through my life, people have come to me at certain moments in their life. And I found that they've come to me for a few reasons. And one of them was like, I'm really struggling. I'm really suffering with something. And it was an interesting pressure to have, because you kind of have to have an answer, and you have to, you want to be able to help a person. And to be honest, most of the time I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. But there was always something that would channel through. And I think this was this interesting relationship that built with courage. But through this, I've come to realize that when I've questioned and done inquiry into what people are fearing, or the anxiety, the apprehensions they have, the things that they are just so paralyzed, they're either fighting against or they freeze against, they never, ever, ever come true. And most of them are illusions. Most of them are fictitious stories that we tell ourselves in our mind. And so, knowing that 99.9999% of most of these things never, ever come true, humans around us have been building lives. They in marriages, they in jobs, they live in places, they have identities, which are not, they're not living in their authenticity and their truth. They're living in the perception that if this fear came true, it would be so drastic for me, so I better not do the thing. I'm going to avoid these things, and then I live into a fear state. And then the fear state, humans are also interesting, is that we will reinforce ourselves. We have biases. I think there's lots of scientific research on, like, there's 7 or 8 different kinds of biases that we lean into. But if you ask somebody, okay, write down your fear. So this is the exercise for those listening. This is the exercise. Just in your own quiet time, write down everything you fear, personally, professionally, in life. Just write down the fear. I'm afraid I will lose my job. I'm afraid this person will leave me. I'm afraid a car will come out of nowhere and knock me over. I'm afraid an alien will land on and steal my brain. Like, I don't know. It's crazy what people fear. Then in one column, write down your fears. In the second column next to that, just say, is it true? Can you know that it's going to come true? Where's the evidence and the proof? And the chances are that almost 100% of the time, it's you cannot know.
Mm.
and there's no proof that it will come true. And
Mm.
so what's interesting in that moment is what I've come to now lean into is to say, so let me reframe it. So imagine you have an abundance of courage. You have an unlimited resource, the same way that there's oxygen and air on this planet, or there's water in the oceans. You have this unlimited ability to tap into infinite courage. What would your courage recommend you do in this moment? If you didn't believe the fear, but you lean into the courage, and without hesitation, an answer comes.
Yeah.
And then people are left with a choice. And the
Mm.
choice is you can believe your illusion,
Mm-hmm.
or you can come to realization it's not true. And then you
Mm.
can take a courageous action to actually believe in something bigger and
Yeah.
better. And so, and just so you know, like some of the origins of this inquiry really solidified when I got to work with an incredible woman called Byron Katie. I went to some of
Yep.
her workshops. She wrote her most famous book is called Loving What Is. Her role in life is to free the world from stressful thinking. And
Oh,
she
I
says
like
that if
that.
you are under anxiety and you're in fear, or under you're feeling frustration, pressure, and fear, the chances are that you are believing a thought that doesn't exist or that isn't true. You're fighting with reality.
Mm.
And the thing to do is to question your thinking and to question your thoughts. And so in some of the frameworks, she has that similar phrasing of like, well, can you know that this thing is going to happen, this thing that you're
Mm.
mad at? And then her questioning is, so what happens when you believe the thought? And you'll notice that if you believe a negative thought and you believe
Mm.
a fear, in my world, fear to courage, if you believe a fear, how do you start to treat the situation, yourself, and other people?
Mm-hmm.
And you will notice that you have all these crazy behaviors, from like comfort eating and avoidance and being moody and, like
Mm.
just you become a different person. And then who
Yep.
would you be without that thought? And in this case, it would be, who would you be if you didn't believe the fear and you rather believed in the courage? And what you will notice is that you will actually feel a mental and physical state shift. So I know it's a long answer, but if I come back to the source of this, is the switch is to question, is what I'm fearing true? Is it
Yeah.
true? Ask yourself,
Like,
is it true? And I guarantee it will be no. And then you have the responsibility to step into
mm.
the choice. And the choices, and I say that one of my purposes in life, apart from encouraging the future, bringing courage to as many people as I can, is that I would like to leave any situation, any conversation, that I've given someone a choice. I've left someone with a choice, like a red and a blue
Mm.
pill in the Matrix. I've left
I
someone
love
with a
that.
choice. And the choice is, from this moment forward, you can design your life through fear or you can design your life through courage. The power is in your
Mm.
hands.
Mm.
Is it
Mm.
true? Is the trigger?
And that's such a valid question, because I think, especially in the field of mental health, there are so many people struggling out there, and people who have had horrific things happen to them, horrific things that we would not even contemplate, or for us, we would kind of go, no, that would never happen. That's not true. But for them, it's a very real scenario. It has happened. They have endured it. They have gone through it, and they are literally suffering under what has happened. And so for mental health purposes, which is obviously the arena that I'm in, I'm always challenged when I'm faced with someone who cannot see a window, who cannot see a door, who cannot see, all they see is locks and chains and bars, and it's always a challenge to kind of flip that thinking on its head and get them to kind of refocus and go, okay, like, let's start small, right? What is your advice to someone who's maybe in that state of mental health because of circumstances that have happened to them, where you ask that question, is it true? And they will, yeah, it happened, thanks. Like, I didn't ask for it to happen. Like, it happened. Like, I didn't even think that that was possible, and it happened. So where do we go to from there in terms of mental health, and how do we frame it in such a way that it doesn't come off as condescending or unsympathetic or compassionate? Do you know?
It's a great question. I think the very first thing, again, I take this as a privilege that still people will come and connect, in sessions, and I have, at this stage of the game and at certain levels of altitude that I get to play at, the level of trauma people have suffered through um, is just, some of it's just unspeakable to hear some of these stories. And then and I'm tasked with motivating someone or just get over it, move on, and it's, you can't, you can't, it happened. But there is, I do lean a lot on the fundamentals of my trainings in NLP, neuro linguistic
Yes.
programming, and I love the concept of NLP. Says there's a wonderful quote from that body of work that says it's never too late to have a good childhood, which means that at any point there's a thing called timeline therapy in NLP, which is that you can re-access your memories and you can go and visit carefully and well facilitated and well guided. You can go back to some of the most horrific moments and you can revisit them at a distance, at a safe enough distance from emotional feelings and triggers without having to relive traumatic moments. And one of the things that teaches is, what can you can't undo what has happened, but what is the learning that I could gain from it that could help my future self? Where the learning is enough where I could integrate that learning and let the trigger of that moment go as much as what's possible. And I don't think those things ever disappear, but what you can do is you can soften the intensity of it. And so what I would always say is, like, and the other part to this is, you got to distinguish about what had happened and what's about to happen. And I think what is very interesting for people that fall into a trigger or panic attacks and anxiety or fear or depression is they're reliving an old moment, but they've carried that moment into a now moment. And one of the most important things that we can do as really powerful guides to somebody is to be able to parse out what is really happening in the moment versus what's just in the mind. And I think that what I try to distinguish, to separate those things, is when someone is in fear or a past trauma, aspects or elements of the situation they're in feel like, or they have similarities to something they went through before. I really try to create psychological safety, which is to just pause them for a minute and to say, look, you are safe here. You are safe with me. And just take a look around. Are those same things really here? Are they really real? No. Okay. So what is really real right now? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? What are you sensing? And to try and bring them back into the now and into the moment, and to say that thing that's happening in your mind is in your mind, and you have the ability to make it smaller. I don't think those things ever go away, but what we can do is make it smaller. And by making it smaller, we've got to put our focus on something else that we want to grow and make bigger. Because I love in energy management is, where focus goes, energy flows. And so when you put a lot of focus on a pain point, the energy of that pain point grows. If you put your focus on something beautiful, the energy around that grows. And it's like, I call it, because I'm a musician, I call it my mixing desk. Which channels am I dialing up and I'm dialing down? And you have more control than we realize. And if there's anxiety and past voices and past episodes and traumas are revisiting, what we have to be able to do, and again, the peak of those curves, they don't last as long as we think they do. The reason why those things last long is we put a lot of emphasis on it, and then people around us put emphasis. Oh, you okay? And so one of the things we've got to do is try and let the trigger peak and drop off. And the best way to do that is let someone feel the things they're feeling. Okay, feel the things that you're feeling. Let the wave pass through and just notice that you're safe here. Just notice what is around you. And there is a difference between then and now. So let's anchor on now. What are we seeing now? Where are we now? And so I do think that there's some aspects in that when I'm dealing with people going through it's not just as easy as get over it, or,
No.
is it, the is it true is real, but there's some subtleties to it. There's like
Yeah, I
nuance
agree.
and
Subtleties and nuances.
the fundamental is still the same. Is it
Mm,
really true that that event is happening right now? No. Okay.
mm.
So let's work that through. How
Yeah.
do we re-anchor you and ground you now? And one
Mm,
of the beautiful questions, by the way, that I've recently learned from another coach was they were talking about a scale. They drew a scale up of like 1 or 0 to 10 in life, and you can put any metric against that, like how am I doing on my relationships? How am I doing on my
mm,
personal growth? How am I doing on managing my anxiety? 1
mm,
to 10. And you might give yourself a 6 or 5 or 6 or something like that. And what's interesting is humans, we're wired to constantly be trying to seek what's better. And so we'll look at this and go, I'm only a 6 out of 10. And we look at
mm.
the 6 to 10 as the deficit, as what's
Yeah.
missing, what we're not
Mhm,
achieving. But what's really beautiful about this is actually, why is it not a 3 that you're marking yourself? Why is it a
mm,
6?
mm,
So, what makes a difference between it being a 4 and a 6? So why a
mm,
6 and not a 4? And can you
mm,
look back and say, how much better have you become, or how much better are the circumstances, or where have you gotten better over
mm,
this period of time? And then you start to anchor and reinforce the positive aspects. And so what we're always trying to look for in that is to give someone something more courageous to anchor on than the fear, if that makes
mm,
sense. So true is it really true that it sucks? Is it really true that
mm,
it's that bad? Is it really true that you're in the same position? Is it really true that that
mhm,
same moment is happening again?
mm.
No. Okay, so let's look at what you've learned. Let's look at what's better. Let's look
Yeah.
at the progress you've made. Let's look at what you have to look forward to. Let's look at what else you could replace that energy with and direct your energy towards that would actually
Mhm.
give you a positive
Yeah.
outcome. So if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And also being okay
Mm-hmm.
with not being okay and having to
Yeah.
ask yourself the hard questions. Like,
Yeah.
what is tripping me up here? Like,
Yeah.
what is it that I'm not willing to let go of in order to get to the other side?
And
Um,
that comes back to like that, what are you believing great in more? Like I'm still allowing that inner voice to hold me back. I'm still believing I'm
mhm.
not good enough. I'm still worried that I'm not going to get this outcome. I'm
Yeah.
still and
Mm,
again, it's like, oh, I'm noticing the fear is kind of edging out the courage here. So what's the courage needed? And it's a very interesting, gentle one. I have one other provocative one, which I use carefully, but I've also, we have to use our own practices. But
mm,
here's one thing that when somebody is very, very upset or they're talking about something, I get so excited for them. Yeah, I know it
mm,
sounds counterintuitive, but I'm like, oh my, I'm so happy that you were 3. I'm so excited. Like, how amazing. What an opportunity to be at a 4 right now, or a 5 or a 3.
mm,
And they're like, what are you
mm,
talking about? I'm like, well, like, there is so much richness in this. There's so much
mm,
gold in this. Like, let's
mm,
get curious. Like, I believe that we're exactly where we are. If we really think about it, no matter where we are in life is exactly where we are meant to be. And what
mm,
that means is look at the conditions that we're in. I'm feeling burnt out. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling like, great. Okay, so lean into it. Don't avoid the emotion. Don't push
mm,
that down. Don't,
mm,
uh, you know, not give that version of you or that facet of you its moment, because it's
mm,
there to teach you something. So get excited. Oh, I'm a 3. Amazing. Let's dig in. So what's that
mm,
about? And
mm.
then you suddenly go like, well, it's because of blah, blah, blah. I'm like, amazing. Well, imagine you didn't pause to get all like angry about something, or that you weren't super depressed about something. Like, then we may have avoided building a deeper, intimate relationship with our inner self and our inner voice.
Yeah.
That's what depression is, going within. If I'm
Yeah.
angry and frustrated, maybe you come to the point where you've reached your threshold of what you're willing to tolerate. But
Mm,
if we don't give ourselves and honor ourselves the feeling and the emotion, and wherever we've graded ourselves on the scale, we miss the learning. So get
Yeah.
really excited about it. And I had this major breakthrough some years back that kind of became a bit of a signature in my own coaching and sort of advisory stuff, which I was dealing with a really, really, really difficult project and some difficult clients who kept going kind of into this swirl. We were sort of bashing our head on a similar challenge, and I was throwing everything that I could at this toolkit at them to help this team get through. But it was tough, and they were just caught in this. Yeah, but this is the problem. They were just
Mm.
what we would call being stuck in a pit. And at
Mm.
the same time, I was my son was younger, and he kind of fell into the love of gaming, sort of computer gaming.
Mm.
And I was watching him play the game because he was so excited. He was like, Daddy, watch this. I'm collecting the blah, blah, blah. And then he was like, he would get to this, in these games, these adventure games, you collect all these amulets and stuff, and they walk these pathways, and then they suddenly go through a portal, and then they're facing off against some giant creature, and they got to like use all these superpowers and then defeat the creature, and then blah, 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 the portal opens and they move on. And this insight came to me, which was every level has a new devil.
Mm-hmm.
Every level has a new devil. And I suddenly got this kind of reframe. How do you take a pain point and turn it into your superpower? And it goes back
Mm.
to another question that you asked us now, which was, and I realized the breakthrough for the team was I walked into that next session with them, and I just started clapping. I was like, I'm so excited for you. Every level has a new devil. Did you know, team, that you're facing the end of this level? You're facing
Mm.
the big boss, the big creature, that you've got to use everything in your power, because as soon as you do this, you get to elevate as a team to your next level. This is your test. This is your marker. And so that was massive. I had a client recently at a session come up to me who said, Hey, I've been diagnosed with being autistic, and we were working on personal leadership purpose in the room. And she says,
Mm.
but in personal purpose, we have a section where we say, okay, barriers and root causes that would stand in the way of you being able to live out your full version of your purpose. And she said, I always come back to the same thing. I have autism, and I'm not going to be able to achieve half the things. And I said, well, is that true? And then I said,
No.
what if your autism is your superpower, which means you have to find a pathway that is not conventional and that no one
Mm.
else has ever been on? And I just watched this person light up. They hooked on that so hard, and they came back. I found these 7 strategies and this thing, because what was suddenly interesting is they were trying to compare themselves to everyone else, where you got to look at your unique situation and the things you're dealing with and say to yourself, what a gift. No one else in the world has this combination of ingredients to wrestle with. And if I solve
Mm.
this, I get to elevate to the next level. So I know it's
Sure.
multiple things in there, but that's a couple of things that I wanted to share, which was this concept of every level has a new devil, and to
Mm.
go in and celebrate the pain as much as possible, because you suddenly rewire your neurology to look at hardship coming at you as opportunity. Because we always,
Mm-hmm.
well, always is a big word. Often we will notice that human beings associate challenges with, oh my God, here we go again, or this is so bad. Whereas I think, to me, where I say the future is for the courageous, it's because if you can train your mind to look at something that's really tough coming at you, and you
Mm.
rub your hands together and you go, I am so excited. Now, all the neurology in the body and the mind is saying, you are insane. Why on earth are you thinking about it this way? Why would you be getting excited? But it changes the game, because you go like, there's a pain point. Oh, this is the next level. This is the access to the next level.
Mm.
You suddenly completely start rewiring the creativity that enters your mind, the way you look at the world around you, how you start interacting with people, how you treat yourself. So there's something in that, which is, if you can make your pain and the suffering your opportunity,
Mm.
I've noticed the most remarkable things to happen. Again, it doesn't. I'm not saying I'm not acknowledging the traumas that people have
Mm.
gone through, or the difficulties that people are suffering with.
Mm.
The
Mm.
more we let the suffering and the trauma win, the more we stay
Mm.
stuck. The more we
Mm.
turn it into a superpower and an opportunity, the
Mm.
more you get to create the life that you want to create.
Mm.
Is what I've
Mm.
experienced.
I've always thought like moving through your trauma and your pain is rather like a lot of people do stay stuck in it, and their life is built around what happened. And it's so interesting because one of my kids has just so many autoimmune situations. And she has always said from the get-go, from the time she was diagnosed when she was 7 years old, she said to me, I don't want that to be who I am, though. Like, I don't want that to define me. Like, yeah, it's there and it's a part of me, but I don't want that to be the thing that people know about me. And I think that's what happens to people when they are in pain and they get stuck in pain, is they lose sight of what it is that they're capable of and what it is that they still have to give, to learn, to grow, to like expand, right? Because the thing is, we're continually building neural pathways all the time. We're continually building neural pathways. And I had a conversation with someone today, which was amazing. And he said to me, do you believe that traumatic brain injury alters the way that the brain works? And I said, well, it depends on the traumatic brain injury. Yes, but at the same time, I also believe that the brain is such a powerful tool that if we give it the chance, we can develop new neural pathways and doing things that we never would have thought of before. And I just have to look at my husband's brain. So Anthony's brain, 15 lesions on his brain, the myelin sheath that is shot, multiple sclerosis, not a great disease, don't love it. But you know what? That man, his brain has changed so much in the last 12 years. And it's been amazing to me how his brain has actually flipped, pivoted, made these other neural pathways that he's become not like a completely new person, but almost like he's just thinking differently, better. He soaks things up like a sponge, like just watching how his brain has had to compensate with neural pathways that have been interrupted, that have been disturbed, that no longer actually work. And yet he's found other ways. His brain has found other ways of doing things. So I get excited when people say to me, I can't do it. So we tend to believe the negative stuff far better than we tend to believe the positive stuff, which is weird. What is your take on, in terms of being courageous and flipping that switch? And you said like you had the strategy where you walked back into the room with these clients and you got excited, and every level, new devil, right? So they're at the end. So what did that actually do to the room? And did they actually buy into that? And was there that belief that kind of went, oh, wait, actually, yes. Like, what actually happened in that scenario?
Well, I'll sort of anchor on something I've been using for a minute, because I've been thinking a lot about this question. I think about this question pretty much at the beginning, at the end of each day, what you're framing, because I've gotten into a loop, and our team's gotten into a loop it's what we call think, plan, do, review. So we before we go into any situation, even like coming to our call here today together, is how should I be thinking about this before you just walk in? Because how I should think about it puts you into a sense of one, in NLP, they call this thing called the 3 points of position. First point of position, I'm in my body looking out my eyes, right? Second point of position, I'm imagining what it's like to be in you looking through your eyes. Third point of position is I'm a fly on the wall looking at the system. That's like sort of an empathy piece. But I do think that and when you play into that, you start to shift neurological perception. So what I've come to learn in this is that you can track in your life results. And I know this is going to sound a little bit sort of high performance for a minute, but it does. But it has to actually. It comes back down to this. So if you look at if you look at human beings, we're always trying to achieve certain outcomes. We want things in life, or we want certain types of qualities of life, whether it's health or relationships, or
Mm.
that's a result. That's an outcome. So
Yep.
the results and the outcomes we get in life, the ones we're getting, or the ones we
Mm.
desire to get, are all fundamentally trackable to the behaviors that you practice every day. And the
Oh,
behaviors that you practice every day are how you wake up and you run through your day, your
yes.
rituals, your routines, what you do,
Yes.
how you show up, the sequence of events, the choices that you make, behaviors. Now, your behaviors are all absolutely trackable to your state of mind and your thinking.
Mm.
And your thinking is influenced by the insights that you gain if you're willing to get curious and understand. And so
Mm.
this think, plan,
Oh,
do,
that's so
review
good.
cycle, and I'll go back around. Think, plan, do, review cycle is if I walk into any situation, and even it could be literally 5 seconds, the phone's ringing. How should I be thinking about how I want to show up with this call right now? What's my mood? What's my emotion? What do I want out of this? How should I think about this? Oh, I'm meeting Jax right now. How should I be thinking about this? Oh, how nice. It's not the way I was thinking about that last call, which was with an executive, organization going through their stuff. I should be thinking about this differently because this is my sister and this is, I love this person
Mm.
and we've history and stuff and we're going to have a great conversation. I should be thinking
Yeah.
about it that way. So what
Yep.
part of myself am I letting go and what part of myself am I bringing in? Now,
Yes.
let me plan for that in my mind. I'm going to plan up to how do I want to show up to this? I'm going to show up with energy and openness and honesty and transparency. Now let's go and do that. Let's go and have the
Mm.
conversation. Let's do this
Mm.
beautiful podcast. And afterwards, when we hang up, before I go to my next call, I'm going to review, like, how did that go? If I was
Mm.
going to go jump on the again with her, would I do anything different? Would I have said anything different? Would I have showed
Mm.
up anything different? That then feeds how I would think about the next thing.
Mm.
So we get into a loop because that
Yes.
allows you to have ownership. So similarly, I will look at and track results, or I ask people and I really help people to try and identify what are you getting in life?
Yeah.
What is happening in your life? What's the result of your life?
Yeah.
Now let's look at the behaviors you practice on a day-to-day basis to create those results.
Mm.
Now, avoidance is still a behavior.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
That is.
And so, or initiative. And then why avoidance? Let's look at your state of mind. And now let's look at how did we get to this kind of state of mind? Where did those insights come from? And so what's beautiful about this is that, like you said earlier, you can change your state of mind.
Mhm.
I can choose in any moment how to perceive or feel about a
Yeah.
situation. So if I want a happy result, if I want to be successful, if I want to have a great relationship, if I want to, be great at a certain kind of profession, then
Mm.
what behaviors am I practicing each day to get there? And what's my state of mind? Do I believe in myself?
Yeah.
Which voice am I listening to inside my head? Because
Yep.
I tell you one thing that I have also learned, and this is 100% of the time, 100% of the time. And anybody on this call, you can call me up, get on my email and argue with me about this. And I will demonstrate that I think I'm right on this one. Is that 100% of the time, our inner voice, our true
Mm.
inner voice is never, never mean to us. It is the kindest, most nurturing, most loving, greatest fan that we could ever have. Now, any other
Yeah.
voice beyond the one, the critic, the imposter, the punisher,
Mm.
the one
Mm.
that's shouting, when you get that voice to say, I'm not good enough and this isn't going to work and I can't and I'm unattractive and I'm never going to be successful. Ask yourself, whose voice is that?
Mm.
And I guarantee it'll never be yours. I guarantee it'll never be
Mm.
yours. It'll be someone else. It'll be mom. It'll be dad. It'll be the person or the thing. It's the boyfriend that dumped me. It's the
Yeah.
girlfriend that left me. It's the something or the other. And then what is
Mm.
interesting about that is how does that now shape your state of mind? And when it shapes your state of mind, what's the very next behavior you start to practice? And then what's the result of that behavior? And so everything is trackable and traceable. And if you want to, and look, there's one thing I'll say, Jax, it's easy to kind of say this stuff, but I will say that this, and you know me. I practice this stuff every day. There's
Mhm.
nothing I have to that bad mood to good mood, the excruciating anxiety I suffered from, even being on medication to get off of that, has
Mm.
all come from taking ownership and causality of the results that I want to have in life. And I tell you, for
Yep.
anyone listening to this, whether you're suffering from radical ailments or you have everything going for you, um, the best way, the very best way to live a courageous life, but also the very best way to have the life you want, is to become responsible for the results of the things that you're dealing with. And when you become responsible for those results, meaning like, this is what it is, start to think about the behaviors you want to that are going to be necessary to get a different result, and then keep anchoring back. How am I thinking about this? What is my state of mind? And if you can own your state of mind and you can own your behaviors, no one can ever judge you for your results.
I remember the one day I came to you and you had given me advice. And I still came back to you the next day and I was complaining about something. And it's one of the few times that you've been angry with me. And you looked at me and I could just see, I thought, oh shit, now I've done it. Because you looked at me and you went, Jackie, you need to get out of your own damn way. Stop listening to all the other voices and listen to your own. And you walked away and I was still so stunned. You came back and you put your arms around me and you were like, I'm really sorry. And I was like, no, it's okay. I'll just get out of my own damn way. Makes sense. Needed to hear it. When you're talking to me now about the practices and listening to what voice are you listening to? Like there's a
Yeah.
couple of voices in my head that I listen to on purpose. So one of them obviously would be yours. The other is my very best friend of long time who just turned 50, Jackie Ford. And I remember like in high school, she was the one person who would not let me give up. Absolutely would not. Jackie going, no, but you can't do that. Like you have to do this. You have to actually you can't give up now. You have to actually look at this differently. And it was that constant kind of reworking of a situation, like constantly telling me like, that's not how it's going to go. Until eventually I was telling myself that. I was going,
Yeah.
you know what? It's like when I was paralyzed. I was like, oh, wait, this is not my story. We're not doing this. This is not going to be a thing. I'm going to organize some wheelchair races. This is not going to be my story. I'm sure this is not how it was meant to go.
Yeah. Powerful.
And you've got a very tight schedule. You're very dynamic and full schedule, as you say. But what is your wellness routine? Like, what is it that you do for your mental health that builds your wellness?
For those that are into science and stuff, it's called signal to noise ratio is the practice. Let me answer. It's a great question about the routine. Let me frame one thing up as you were speaking that I feel like it's important, which is actually also part of my wellness routine. Is let's talk about environment for a moment, because environment really matters. And some folk maybe on this call, they will look at it. Yeah, it's wonderful, but I don't have the resources and I'm not in the environment for it. And I hear you, and I hear you. And one thing that I've learned, although I love where we grew up and I love where we came from, it was a very limiting place. And so I think very early I met a very inspirational person who said to me, "You are not where you come from. Where you come from can shape you, but it doesn't have to be who you always are."
Yeah.
Meaning that you can change your circumstances if you truly want to. Results, behaviors, mindset. Environment matters, and what I mean by environment is where you spend your time and with whom you spend your time and what you feed yourself is my wellness routine. And so I very rarely at all listen to the news. I don't subscribe to negative media. I spend very little time with people who are, although my profession and my job is to go into very highly toxic and highly volatile environments.
I was going to say,
But it's not that I sit to entertain those conversations. My job is to go into to break the pattern and to state shift. It's really to shift the mindset and to shift the
yeah,
patterning. So in order to do that, to not be overwhelmed by the environment, because for any empath on this call, you can imagine when you walk into a place and you feel everyone's stuff. I'm like that, so I feel everybody's stuff. But what I've learned to do is to to ensure that I'm very strong in my own convictions of my own voice
Mm,
and my own mind. But to be able to
mm,
trust your own inner voice, you got to have a really strong practice of
yeah.
environmental awareness. And I don't mean that from a nature conservationist, but it is kind of metaphorically like a nature
Mm.
conservationist. Is your environment matters, meaning, there's that quote, you become the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
And you start taking on perceptions, you take on behaviors, you take on characteristics. So if you're
Yeah.
living in certain environments, you will find yourself starting to be influenced by those environments. And so be very conscious of where you spend your time and with who you spend your time. And one of the best, for
Mm,
me, my best metric is my energy marker. If I leave a call or I leave spending time with a person, do I feel elevated or deflated? And it
mm,
can be sometimes very subtle, but are you giving a lot to someone who is just vampiring and feeding from you, and they're not giving you anything
ooh,
in return? Be very careful of that. It's very
yeah,
subtle. There's other people when you're a high vibration person like myself or like you and others, is that people will look at this life and say, this is an amazing life to have. I wouldn't wish this on anyone. This is a choice for me. But
mm,
as my mom says, um, when you climb a high mountain that goes into very thin air, it's really hard to breathe the higher up the mountain you go. And it's not
yeah,
for everybody. And in order to live
mm,
up there, if you're a Sherpa, you've got to have different types of practices. So for me, sleep, what you feed your mind and in the information you give it, who you listen to, what you feed your
mm,
body in terms of nutrition, right down to the
mm,
fundamentals. I wear a Whoop, so I track an aura. So I track my data relentlessly.
mm,
My sleep patterns, my stress patterns, my heart rate variability patterns. I'm very careful that I do a sort of a tuning when I'm in any environment in and out to have sensory perception on how am I feeling leaving that place? What are the vibes that
yes,
I'm carrying with me? How do I cleanse that? How
yes,
do I care for that? Exercise, movement, meditation. Nature's my number one thing. I'm literally
mm,
a feral creature really inside. I just love running around in the wild. And the further I am away from nature and the longer I call that my rewilding practice. So the
mm,
rewilding is I'm a real wild human, and I go into very conservative, constrained, constructed places, like caged places. I walk
mm,
into zoos and into prisons, and metaphorically speaking, and I have to bust people out and help show them
mm,
that, look, the walls are self-imposed, the doors are open, the windows are open, the fresh air can
mm,
flow through.
mm,
But it is very easy to be impressioned by that. It's very easy to carry
yeah,
that with you. And so my
yeah,
practices across the board are tracking data, really looking at measurements, the unseen things, having
wow,
advisory councils around me, having people call me out, having people really
yeah,
tune in, people watching my back, and then being very disciplined in what I eat and what I drink and who I spend
mm,
my time. But environment matters like more than
mm,
we can realize. And
I
and
agree
and I'll
with that.
tell you, like, just always think about this, like, what do you feed yourself, consciously or unconsciously? Because what
Yeah,
you feed yourself is what fuels you, and what fuels you
mm,
starts to grow. And I've learned the hard way, and I'm kind of actually in that right now because I spoke to my wife just a couple nights ago, and we have this joke where if we are self-critical on ourselves, she goes, "Don't talk about my boyfriend or my lover that way or my husband that way." It's like,
that's so cute.
and so, but I said to her, I used these words the other day. I am very embarrassed and disgusted in myself. Allowed myself to index too far to a point where it's starting to, and I didn't catch it fast enough because my schedule's been insane. Um,
Mm,
really insane. Like if I break it down, people say like, "How is that even possible?" But the work feels, and I have not protected my my personal environment and my energetic
yeah,
field enough, and I let myself slip to the point where I was like, wow, that is a significant slip. And so
yeah,
the inner voice, which is actually very kind, you need to be loving with yourself. And then I have this other voice, which is always on, you're terrible and you're a bad person. So those two voices come together and argue inside of my head. But what was really great about it is that they could both agree. They could both agree. My
mm,
nurturing voice and my punishing voice could both agree. I need to recalibrate my routine. And I realized, oh, I'm facing my devil right now. And my devil is this new
right.
level that we're at. with this merger and this integrations and all these changes that happen in our world and our business, has taken me up to a place which is all new. And at this new place, all my existing routines have to be reimagined and reset and rethought of because my old system, they call that evolutionary mismatch. The world around us and our environment has evolved based on our desires and what we work towards. But my world around me has evolved, but my systems have not. So I now have to recalibrate my systems to match the environment that I'm in. So my routine was like, I'm home and I have the same hour structures each day, and I'm working out at an office. No, I'm not. I've been on 36 flights this year. I'm jumping. I think this last week I was in 4 different hotels. I was in 3 different countries and across 17 hours of time zone change. Where do you find time to have a healthy, balanced meal when you're on planes and hotels and restaurants and stuff? And where do you find time to exercise? So the system, not that that's going to be the consistent system, but where is the new system that I'm in? My old system of practices does not calibrate to the environment I'm in. So the evolutionary mismatch means that I then am in conflict with myself.
It's so good to hear you speak so honestly about your own struggle, because I know that a lot of people looking from the outside in, like you were saying, go, wow, like this life is amazing. And, but actually when we hear you go, no, guys, listen, like it takes, there's some work that needs to happen here. And I think it's really incredible that people can go, oh, right. So he also has to do it. Like it doesn't actually, it's also like,
relentlessly.
Because people forget, right? They forget.
There is no fixed destination, is what I've come to realize.
That's actually what I was going to say.
Tectonic plates, like it's always moving, always moving.
Yeah. I just want to quickly say thank you, and I love you. Like,
I love you too.
You're still my brother. I still adore you. I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of everything that you've accomplished. I'm so proud of the family that you have, of your gorgeous wife, your children. I'm so proud of the mark that you're leaving, the legacy that you're leaving. I want to end off just asking you, when it comes to being courageous, when it comes to thinking about the future, what is the one thing that you would want to say to the young people out there, and maybe the people who are also like 40 and thinking like, I don't like this life, I want to change it?
The one thing that comes to mind, and I always trust the first thing that comes to mind, is follow your nurture. There are so many reasons to the old mental models in the world were suffer to succeed. And a lot of people around you are going to try and convince you that you have to suffer in order to be successful. It's absolute BS. Follow your nurture. Just do everything you can to just do what lights you up and what feels nurturing to you. Now that, sometimes you might not be clear on purpose or on passion, but you will know that if you spend time doing certain things, you will feel a sense of nurturing. I'm talking about like nurturing, like this gives me energy. This gives me life. This feels like me. And where you are in a joyful mode, it will be an upper sense of emotions. But for anyone coming up in the world, you've got time and space to change your mind and to adapt and become 1,000 versions of yourself. Whatever you do, make sure you're doing it for reasons that nurture you rather than punish you. And the other thing that I would just say is spend as much time as you can getting familiar with your voice versus someone else's voice, and always follow your own voice, because your own voice really is the key. Trusting your own intuition and your own voice is key in life. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to everybody that was listening. And I'll see you very soon.
And there we have it. I already know that you gained so much valuable knowledge from Kyle. If you would like to know more about Kyle and the work he does, you can find him on various social media platforms, as well as his website, bcrgs.com. Please feel free to share your comments and offer your thoughts. Also, remember, if there is anyone you would like me to interview, a topic that you would love to hear more on, or a person you would like to hear more from, please reach out with your suggestions. Our info is in the bio. As always, my heartfelt thanks go to Kyle for his time and wisdom, as well as to all of you listening. Take care, and I can't wait to chat next time.